Hi everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Today I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books, and today we're going to be wrapping up what I read in the month of December. Now, in December, I participated in two readathons, and they were the Christie's Missing Readathon and the Cloak and Dagger Christmas. I've already wrapped up the Christie's Missing Readathon elsewhere. I'll put a link to that video if you haven't seen that before and you would like to. But today I'm going to wrap up the books I read in the later half of the month, wrap up Cloak and Dagger Christmas, and give you a little bit of an update on the Giant TBR. Editing Alice here. I completely forgot to share my stats for the month, so I read 13 books in total. 11 of those were physical books or ebooks, because I did read one poetry ebook this month, and 2 books were on audio. I think first of all we should deal with what I didn't read for the month. I had a very ambitious TBR, I think, for these two readathons, and there's quite a lot left here that's staying on the TBR because it didn't get read. So firstly, The Last Detective by Robert Craze. I didn't get to The Mousetrap and Selected Plays by Agatha Christie. I really sadly didn't get to My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier, which I might well try and read this month because you all picked it for me to be one of my last reads of the year. I just did not have time to squeeze this in anywhere, so I will pick this up either this month or next. I didn't get to Wash This Blood Clinging From My Hands by Fred Vargas, and as I suspected I didn't get to Dorothy L. Sayers' Unnatural Death. So that was a few books I didn't read. Now let's have a look at the books that I did read. First of all, I'll quickly show you the ones that I've already wrapped up elsewhere and let you know whether I put them into my okay, good or very good category, or was it a favourite of the month. So The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham was a very good book. I really enjoyed this, and my husband did too. He listened to it on audiobook. Giant's Bread by Mary Westmacott was not my favourite Mary Westmacott I've read so far, and I would put this in the good category. I would also put the Sitterford Mystery in there because although I really enjoyed this the first time around, it wasn't so good on the second read. A Spoonful of Poison by MC Beaton, this was okay. And there were also a couple of audiobooks in there. Footsteps in the Dark by Georgette Heyer, I would definitely put that in very good. The Inspector Gamache one that I read, A Fatal Grace by Louise Penny, which was also on audiobook, I would put that in good, but I will definitely continue with that series. So on to the books that I haven't wrapped up anywhere else yet. These were predominantly for the Cloak and Dagger Mystery Readathon. I really enjoyed this readathon. The prompts were great, and I was really excited because I did manage to complete all of the prompts and get to the Sherlock Holmes level. To do that, I watched Evil Under the Sun with Peter Ustinov in it over Christmas, and I'll let you know here which prompt they completed as well. And Cloak and Dagger Christmas was kindly hosted by Kate Howe, Melanie Martin, Janelle at Too Fond of Books, Kate at The Novel Nomad, and Carolyn at Carolyn's Reading Ramblings. And I just want to say thank you to all of those channels because it was a really good readathon. I will definitely do it again if they are hosting it again next year because I absolutely love reading mysteries around Christmas time. I will link all of those channels in the description box down below so you can go and check all of them out. Next in the month, I finished The 450 from Paddington by Agatha Christie. As usual, this was a reread and it was for Christie Fest. And I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed it the first time around, I enjoyed it the second time around, and it's Miss Marple, and it's definitely one of my favourite Miss Marples that there are, even though Miss Marple doesn't feature in it a huge amount. I really enjoy the other characters in this one, I really enjoy the premise, and it's just a really interesting murder mystery that just seems unsolvable at first. So very enjoyable. I had forgotten who had done it, so I had a great time reading it again. So I would definitely put this in my very good category for this month. The next book I finished just before Christmas, and I'm so happy that I finally read this book, and I will undoubtedly read it probably every year at Christmas because it's perfect for reading at Christmas time. So this one I read for a read along that I saw on Katie's channel at Books and Things. It was brilliant. And that was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I didn't read all of the stories in this book this year, but I think next year I could go back and read the rest if my mum will lend me this again. I absolutely love the story of Scrooge and what happens to him when he is visited by the ghosts. It's just a fantastic story. I cried at the end. I absolutely loved every minute of reading this. I enjoyed finding all the differences between this and my favourite Christmas film of all time, The Muppets Christmas Carol, and I enjoyed it so much. So this was a top favourite of the month. Very, very good. I highly recommend, if you've never read this, to read this for Christmas next year. The next book I finished on Christmas Day, and that was The Killings at Kingfisher Hill by Sophie Hannah. This is one of Sophie Hannah's continuation Poirot novels. I really like the supporting character in this who tells the story. His name is Inspector Catchpole. I like him, but these to me just don't feel quite like a Poirot should. I mildly enjoyed this mystery, but it was definitely lacking a bit of punch, and it seemed like in the beginning it was made unnecessarily difficult when actually the mystery was incredibly straightforward, and that was quite annoying. Yeah, it was not one of my favourite mysteries, but I enjoyed reading it and it was quite light. And I'll still continue to read everything that Sophie Hannah brings out in her Poirot series because I just enjoy revisiting Poirot with new mysteries that I haven't read before. So I can't stop myself. On Boxing Day, I actually read one of my Christmas presents, which was The Invisible Host by Gwen Bristow and Bruce Manning. The reason I wanted this book for Christmas was because I've seen a bit online about the possibility of this having influenced one of my favourite Agatha Christie books, And Then There Were None. This came out, I think, about 4 years before And Then There Were None, in 1930, and it is very different from And Then There Were None, but I suppose if you look at it, you could see definitely similarities between the premise of this and the premise of And Then There Were None. So this is set in New Orleans in 1930, so that's different, and 8 guests are invited to a party in a penthouse. When they get there, they realise none of them knows who the host is. The radio then tells them that they are all going to be dead by morning unless they can outsmart the killer. So in Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, 10 strangers are invited to an island. So a big difference here is that these people were not strangers to each other, they do know each other. In And Then There Were None, a gramophone record is played on their first night there, accusing them all of having done bad things, and they start to die. There's definitely a similarity. There's an introduction in this book telling us all about this similarity, and the writer of that introduction, whose name is Curtis Evans, does seem to think that probably Agatha Christie would have at least heard of the film of this, because there had been a film by the time her book came out as well. I'm inclined to think it could even just be a coincidence, because yes, it's a similar idea, but it's carried out so very differently, and the plots completely diverge from that point. And this is far, far, far inferior to And Then There Were None. It was really enjoyable. I read it in a day, but it's nothing compared to the genius that is And Then There Were None. And I enjoyed reading this for the mystery itself and for the comparison of the two, but it didn't have a very satisfactory whodunit to it, or a very satisfactory conclusion really. I enjoyed it nonetheless, and I would put this in probably my good category, maybe bordering a little bit on very good, but there's a couple of things that I just didn't love about it. So the next thing I finished off was Lyrical Ballads by Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth, and this was a poetry book which I actually read as an ebook. It was not my favourite poetry collection I've ever read. I mainly read it to reread The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge, which still remains an excellent epic poem. Really enjoyed that, and wasn't so keen on the rest of the poems. There were maybe sort of 5 or 6 standout poems in the collection, and even those, you know, I probably won't go back to this collection for a long while, but they were okay. If you've read this collection, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. I read this with David Wiley and Aaron Facer in their poetry group. I think we all had similar feelings of disappointment about the collection as a whole, but we all enjoyed The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. My penultimate book of December, I was actually reading throughout the month and nearly right up to the end of the month, and that was the Iliad by Homer. I really enjoyed Greek mythology when I was a child and read lots of Greek myths in sort of cartoon form and things like that. Had some Greek myths read to us by my mum, and really enjoyed watching a cartoon of the Odyssey, which I'm going to be reading in January. So I have been mildly interested in sort of Greek myths and things for a while. I also read a few years ago The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, which piqued my interest in this sort of particular period of ancient Greece, the Trojan Wars. This was actually my first exposure to like one of the main sources about those Trojan Wars, and I'm really glad that I've read like this original epic. Mine was translated as prose, so one day I would like to ideally read at least some of a verse version. Some of the people in the group I read this with, which was the Eclectic book club run by Shelley Swearingen and David Wiley, and some people in that group read verse translations, and I think they got on well with it. The thing I didn't enjoy so much about the Iliad was the battle scenes, which is a shame because there are a lot of battle scenes, but what it was specifically about the battle scenes was that there were just sections of a very repetitive nature. So it would be, for example, so-and-so from such and such a place stabbed name of another person from another place, son of whoever, in the whichever body part the person was stabbed in. And then there would usually be like a little bit going off on one about the person who'd just been killed, where they came from, and like how they came to be at the battle or what their past history was, and then the person would die. And that was the sequence over and over again for a lot of the battle scenes, so they weren't my favourite. I can see why it's done like that. I can see how it's like an epic verse or a song in its original form, and that's fine. It just wasn't my favourite part of it. What I did like about it was that there were some good parts with the gods, and there were some really interesting sort of human moments buried within this. A bit with Hector and his wife, and there's also just the ending gets really good once Achilles comes back into it. Once Patroclus goes off to fight, everything really hots up, and the ending of this really surprised me because I thought that something was going to happen that didn't. But I really enjoyed, towards the end, a discussion between two of the characters and the respect that they gave to each other despite being on opposite sides of the conflict. And yeah, this book left me with a feeling that I had really enjoyed it because the last few books of it were so good. And actually, since I finished reading it, I've missed reading it. I felt like, because I'd read most of the time I'd read a chapter a day, when there were no more chapters to read, I actually felt a little bit sad that I didn't have another chapter to read. So looking forward to reading the Odyssey this month, and I'm sure that that one will be even better for me because I already know and like the story of Odysseus. So yeah, I think this could lead me down a rabbit hole of sort of ancient Greek related stuff. I've borrowed The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller from my mum. I'd like to probably read up a bit on the Trojan War generally, or read maybe some non-fiction about this, or maybe some other novelisations. So yeah, I think it was really worthwhile to read the Iliad. I can understand why some people don't, but I found it easier to read than I thought, and I would go back to it again. I think I'm going to sneak this into one of my favourites of the month, just because it was so epic and it was with me all month long, so it feels a bit like an old friend now. Probably in reality it's in the very good category if I'm totally honest with myself, but let's give it a favourite of the month. The final book that I read in December for the Cloak and Dagger Readathon was Young Sherlock Holmes Red Leech, and this met 2 of the prompts, so it enabled me to complete the entire bingo board and attain Sherlock Holmes level. And Young Sherlock Holmes Red Leech by Andrew Lane is a book that is about exactly what it says it's about, Sherlock Holmes when he is younger, and this one sees him on a trip to America. These books are good. I've also read the first one in the series, but they lack a bit of the excitement of the actual Sherlock Holmes books, and just every time we got to somewhere where the author could give us loads of information about something and teach us something, he did. I did feel like I was being given lessons in something and not reading like a fun mystery at points. At other points it's really fast paced and it does require a bit of suspension of disbelief, but overall I like this book well enough. If I do come across any of the rest of this series, I probably would pick them up and try them. It doesn't take very long to read them. If you've read further into this series than I have, this is the second book, please could you let me know in the comments down below whether it's worth continuing with. I do enjoy learning little bits about what this author imagines about Sherlock Holmes's young life, and I enjoy some of the other characters who are his sort of friends and things, but it hasn't made me feel like I must buy the third book immediately. I would put this in my good category. It was mildly entertaining. So that was all the books I read in December. Really enjoyed the readathon and really enjoyed the readathon earlier in the month as well. What's not to love about mystery and Agatha Christie readathons? Really looking forward to a brand new year of reading and the possibilities that that brings. And all that remains for this video is to give you an update on the Giant TBR. So by the time you see this video, you may have already seen a video with my book haul from Christmas. So the count is a little bit trickier this month. I read 5 books from the Giant TBR, and I also read a book that I had just received, so I don't know. But anyway, let's call it 5. I read 5 books from the Giant TBR, bringing the number down from 193 at the end of last month to 188. Then that's slightly cancelled out by books received for Christmas. I received 5, but I've already read 1 of them, so I'll take that down to 4 as I didn't count it. That brings us to 192. So I'm really pleased with that. It means that I read enough this month to cancel out getting the books for Christmas, and we're still in a good place, below 200. 192 books seems like a great place to start for this year, and really hoping to get to that magic 150 or lower by the end of the year, which I think is very doable. I did really enjoy my reading in December, and one of the books will definitely feature in an upcoming video of my top 10 of the year. If you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like, and I hope you consider subscribing if you haven't already, and sticking around to see more bookish content from me in 2022. I hope you all will join me again soon for another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.